Well, first thing I've got to say is I applaud President Obama's leadership in terms of dealing with the Ebola outbreak. He's shown the leadership and the knowledge and tenacity to actually make sure that the US is in there combating the problem in West Africa, as has the UK. We've said all along that the UK and the US are building centres for treatment of international healthcare workers should they get infected with Ebola, and that's going to happen on the ground, in country, in West Africa. And that is the best way to deal with that problem. So the contingency plan is there. The excuses about flying someone 30 hours home just don't stack up anymore. And if you're talking about lifters and leaners, it's clear that the US and the rest of the international community are doing the heavy lifting, while Australia is a leaner. And we know that we have many people in this country that support sending people to West Africa. 70% of people surveyed have said that they support sending international healthcare workers to go and deal with the crisis in West Africa. We know that a survey of nurses recently suggested that there were 350 nurses that all would put up their hand to go and work in West Africa, should that they be resourced and supported to go and do that work. And we know that there are many doctors that would do the same, and in fact there are already about 30 people that are over there doing this important work. If we're truly serious about tackling this problem, it's not about being ready to treat the problem in our region, it's actually about going to West Africa and dealing with the problem that exists now. And it is time for the federal government to reconsider their current position and make sure that they too start to do some lifting and make sure that we get this infection under control, not only because of the economic and security consequences, but just because it's the right thing to do in tackling this humanitarian crisis which is evolving in Africa now. Well, the number of infections has now jumped up. I think the latest figure is over 13,000 infections, because we know that there are many unreported cases. Now, we've already had 5,000 people die from Ebola in West Africa, and we've seen the predictions from the WHO, which has said that we could have 10,000 new infections per week if we haven't acted within the next month or so. Now, there is action that's taking place from the US and the UK, and that's already starting to pay some benefits. But the WHO and the UN don't make these sorts of claims, don't make these sorts of announcements or use these sorts of figures unless they've got pretty good evidence to say so. They're not in the habit of trying to scare people. They are usually a very conservative organisation. So when they start to talk about 1.4 million infections by next year, when they start to talk about 10,000 infections per week, I think it's time for the international community to sit up and take notice. That's what we've seen from the UK and the US and other countries such as China and even Cuba. And it's time for the Australian government to start to listen to its own people in actually responding to this crisis in West Africa as well.